how many of you in 2D design feel like you are finished with your space projects? Okay, cool. Thank you for those of you that participated. All right, I know there are a few hands, okay, but not everybody feels finished yet. If you are not completely done with that project, I do get it. It's a tedious project, it takes a while. I would like for you to do everything in your power to finish that up today and be done with that if at all possible. A few of you have been out a little bit more, and so you just kind of have the disadvantage of less time to work on it, but try your absolute best to finish it. And again, I know it is tedious. Before you submit it, I know after a while you can get very tired of making all those lines and it gets kind of annoying to just look at the same things over and over again. But definitely zoom out and check and make sure that nothing immediately seems off with your design. Okay, kind of like how we get an uncanny valley when we look at things that are sort of human but not really. You could typically look at things that are 3D forms and you can feel whether or not they seem like they're sort of lopsided or off. Just take a look at them. And if there is something in particular in your design that's giving you trouble, let me know and I'll gladly help you figure out maybe how we can tweak it. On rare occasions, because stuff is overlapping, sometimes you have to cheat. And what actually is correct looks wrong. And so sometimes we have to tweak it to make it look better, even if that's not exactly the right way to do it. Okay, so if you haven't, please try to finish this project up. For those of you that are done, I want to go ahead and introduce the new project. And for anybody that is still working on it, I still want you to take a second, listen to this new project so you can think about what you want to do. Okay, this is technically part 2 of the space project. This is going to be your first bigger project for the year where you get to make some decisions. You're going to use the different things that we've already been practicing so far this year to help you compose a design that's kind of your own. So this is one of the first projects that we'll work on for like several days as well, like at least a week. We're moving more into that and less into tutorials for just a little bit. But we're going to call this your Space Part 2 project or your Fantastic Landscapes. And if you look on Canvas, I do have a really basic overview of the project. Essentially, we're going to use some of the same things that you just did in the part 1, where we are going to create some 3D forms, but you're going to use photos and a compilation of collage and things like that in Photoshop to create your own landscape. And I know last year, if you were in level 1 with me, we like drew and created your own landscapes. This is not the same thing. This is a little bit different. But I'm going to go ahead and walk you through this slideshow, the same one that's linked here, and we'll take a look at some examples and things. Okay, so here are a handful of examples. I will admit a lot of the examples that are in here have a sort of futuristic, techno kind of video game sort of vibe, and that's fine. Yours don't have to have that same sort of feel to them, but they are more than welcome to. The idea for this project is you're going to create a landscape, meaning somewhere that has land and space. Okay, now it can be a fantastical landscape, kind of like the one on the left that is clearly like on another planet and doesn't exist. We don't have trees with purple leaves. You can do something that uses a photograph of just a regular, beautiful outdoor space. It could be a city. It could be any type of landscape that in some capacity includes a faraway view of land. But then you have to include somewhere in it some 3D forms. So like if you look at each one of these examples, there are things like spheres and cubes that are floating around in space. Now you can decide how you do those. You can decide what they look like. You can decide the colors, the things that you put in there. But those are the basic requirements. It needs to be a landscape with some kind of 3D forms that you've created yourself and added in there. Now, your 3D forms can be solid color shapes, kind of like this one over here on the right, or the one in the center, or even, I guess, the one on the left. They can just have a little bit of shading, but be mostly solid color. Or you can create something inside of them. People in the past have done things like turn theirs into floating parts of a building, things of that nature. A lot of people have kind of interpreted it similar to if you saw any of the movies with Doctor Strange, where he would like open portals and things like that. You can create a look that's similar to that, where there is something inside of that 3D form space, but you don't have to. Okay, and there are a lot of weird examples out there. Your example does not necessarily have to look like it would be a real place in any capacity. I just want you to create something that you feel like has the parameters of both a landscape and 3D forms, but is also just cool and interesting to look at in your own way. So it can include people in it. I highly recommend that it does. But it could also include objects like, I don't know, vehicles or animals, or maybe there's a really specific silhouette of a tree that you want to use. Okay, and how you decide that you want to sort of organize these things is completely up to you. Now, again, I know a lot of these pictures have a sort of like futuristic video game kind of look. You don't have to use bright psychedelic colors. You're more than welcome to if you want to. But don't feel like just because a lot of these pictures have the same palette, you have to make yours sort of look the same. It doesn't. Okay. And how you choose to treat your 3D forms is totally up to you. They can feel like an actual structure that is there in the landscape, or they could feel like something sort of foreign that's floating or just like off in the distance or something of that nature. Okay. Here are the basic requirements. And again, from this, you can kind of take your own approach to it. Okay. But as far as a starting place, I do want you to pick some landscape photos. And I want you to use at least 3 different landscape photos. Okay, they don't have to all be of the same landscape, they can be. You can create entirely your own little world, but use at least 3 different photos that you use together, cut out and put together in some way to make the general land surface area. Okay, I would use very large resolution photos for this. And we'll go over searching for those here in a second. Okay, and then you need to have some kind of geometric form, at least one minimum 3D form somewhere in your design. Okay, and it can be something sort of more subtle like this one, where like it's kind of see through and reflective, or it could be something that's super dominating in a different color. Consider having more than one thing, but think about how you're going to blend these 2 things together. How are you going to make the landscape and the form sort of fit together? How are you going to blend them? Okay, I do want you to really think about lighting and reflection, how you add shading. Your form, in order for it to truly feel like it's 3D, it is going to need some kind of shading on it. There are a few examples in here that have things like brightly colored suns and moons that are just a flat circle. That's not what I'm looking for out of you in particular. Yours has got to have a little bit of shading somewhere on one of your 3D forms. Okay, you do need to color correct stuff. And we'll go over how to do this next class, actually. You're going to be combining together 3 different landscapes. Even if you get 3 different landscapes that are technically of the same place on this earth, the lighting is bound to be different. The colors are bound to have some different effects and different things that pop out. We'll work on color correcting them so things feel like they genuinely are in the same place and they don't look like a bad magazine collage that you made in like elementary school. Okay, but think about the perspective. You want your perspective to make sense with your landscapes. And then I'm going to give you all a choice on size. Okay, each of you, I know you're going to have your own kind of idea of what you want to do. So you can do something that's square, like a 10 by 10, kind of like this one. You can do something that is 11 by 14 or something that is 9 by 14. And you can decide whether it's vertical or horizontal. But some of you will probably imagine things that are really tall and skinny, like a skyscraper. And so you might want the 9 by 14. Others might just want something that looks more like a poster. It's up to you and what you think you might want to do. Okay, but I do want you to really think about how you can add something interesting to these landscapes that are already there. At the end of the day, even though this is a digital collage in Photoshop, we don't want it to feel like you just quickly picked something out and just dropped it on there. We want it to feel like you consciously created a new space. So I am going to have you do a few sketches, but again, I would wait and we'll look up some images first. And once you feel like you have a good set of images, then create some sketches based off of that. Because sometimes you can have an amazing idea for a sketch, but it's really hard to find the photos that you need, and then you have to change up your entire design to suit it. I also want you to think about color palette. Okay, we can change the colors of any photos that you get. Your landscape can look completely different from whatever the original photo has. Think about how things will overlap, just like you did with the last project. You've got to put together 3 different landscape photos in some way, plus you've got to have some other forms. How are those things going to be arranged? How are you going to create space with them? Okay, there is an artist online. Her name is Pt.2. That's the name that she goes by. She's a Los Angeles designer, but she creates a lot of sort of trippy landscapes like this. Not all of hers fit the same requirements that you all have for the project, but like each one of these are some of her designs. She has some that feel very realistic, and she has a lot of other ones that feel just sort of, I don't know, like retro and just sort of otherworldly. So you can kind of decide how realistic it feels, but you need to still do color correction to make it feel like the photos go together. So if you want to do things like add these kind of lines or checkerboard patterns or things that just wouldn't realistically be anywhere, that's cool. That's fine if you feel like that suits your design. Or you can do something that feels more realistic and feels more like concept art for a very specific type of game or movie. Okay, and there are a lot of different types of examples out there. I would consider having some kind of figure or animal or thing that kind of draws a little attention somewhere in your piece just to give a tiny focal point within that landscape. And in some of hers, she just uses plants. Okay, again, it could be any number of things. But what I would like for you to do today, again, number one, I want us to look for photos first. And once you've got some photos that you feel like you can work with, let's make a sketch. Okay, you do need to choose your geometric forms, and your forms could be whatever forms you want. They could be spheres, diamonds, rectangles, cubes. Okay, whatever you like, but they should be geometric in nature. And I want you to make the most basic sketch ever. But I want you to make sure you have your photos chosen first to aid you with that sketch. And I do want you to think about color theme. So you can choose whatever colors you want. You can create whatever kind of mood you want to do with your particular landscape. I'm gonna hit escape really quick. I know they've blocked most of the good like photo search sites here at school, but Unsplash, so unsplash.com, is still one of the few that are kind of unlocked. You could search all kinds of things in here. Like I searched Glacier National Park. Okay. Let me give you a couple of quick little tips as you look for your landscapes. And you don't have to do like a beautiful, majestic national park type of landscape. Again, it can be a desert. If you wanted to do something underwater or make it look like it's on another planet, or you wanted to do more of a city type scene, that's fine. But I do want you to really think about perspective. So, like, let's look at a couple of things really quick. All right. A lot of these pictures that I searched here, they are from really far away, and I can see mountains in the distance. Maybe this wasn't the best one. Let me try. Um, okay, let's try something like this. So maybe I do want to do a city. Okay, you could find things like buildings, like, all of these buildings here. Okay, there's cool buildings here. But think about the road for a second. Most of you have had to do those perspective drawings with a road before. As you pick out your different photos, think about the angle that that photo is taken at. Okay, some of them are sort of looking up from like the ground upwards toward the top of the buildings, and they have a very specific angle on them. Others are kind of looking straight forward or even down at the buildings below. Pick out landscapes that seem like they are from the same eye level. Okay, pick out landscapes that seem like they would realistically be in the same space. Like, let's try something else. Okay, like some of these desert photos, they're kind of just looking straight ahead. The horizon line is like halfway through the photo. In others, you're looking down. Like in this one, it's probably a drone or helicopter photo that's looking down. All of these pictures are fine, but you've got to find ones that will go together in a way that feels like they're on that same plane, like they're in the same space. If the perspectives are wrong, if like it feels like they're at different angles, it will immediately, I don't know, lose its sense of realism without you even having to try to do anything. Okay. All right, you guys are extremely quiet. I know most of you, like 2/3 of you, still need to finish your 3D forms. I'll let you work on that. Okay. If you are someone who is finished with that, start looking for photos. And if you find some photos and you're really unsure of like whether or not you're kind of headed in the right direction, or you want some feedback on whether or not they might work well for this project, let me know. I can show you a few that I downloaded earlier that I will probably use for my own example. Okay, so I'll probably do sort of a desert theme myself, but I tried to look for ones that are at about the same perspective. These are a little bit different. Okay, and some of them I know I'm just going to cut things out. Like this perspective is wrong down here of this person sitting down, but all I'm going to steal from this photo is the person. Okay, and I'll show you a few examples next time, but I want you to kind of just create something that is your own. For this project, we're going to do a lot of layer masking. So next class, we'll practice some layer masking stuff that might make it a little bit easier just to make sure everybody has a refresher on that as well. Okay? We feeling all right? Okay. Save often.